Yo, what's going on, Elite Mafia? This is Benny Ricciardi here, filling in, doing the host duties today for my man Corey Parsons, who is down in Washington, D.C. There may be some truth to the rumor that he's on Capitol Hill right now. I think he got one of those, subpoenas that the House was handing out for something. I don't know. Corey is a little bit of a shady character, so he probably had some money coming in from the Ukraine that he was hiding somewhere or dropping off for somebody. But that's our man. He'll be back on Monday. But you guys are in good hands today, because I got my boy here for his second appearance on the opening line in 2 weeks. My man, Thad Houston, Mr. Rad Thad. What is going on, bro?
Benny and Rad Thad. Man, the boys are back together, man. It's good. It's good. I'm glad to be here as I was last week. We had a great time with Corey. We have a great time with you. These people, if y'all haven't seen me and Benny together, y'all in for a treat, because we're gonna try to keep this show on the rails. Number one, that's not going to happen. We're going to try, but it's not going to happen. And we're going to try to keep it contained within a specific time limit, because we can each talk about this shit forever. So
yeah,
I'm going to do my best. If I get off, if I get off key, just guide me back, and I'll be good.
There's a good chance we might go like an hour on the first game and then be like, oh shit, and talk like 2 minutes about the rest of the game. We have done that before.
We've done that before.
But this is good, man. Thad and I used to do the show together on Sunday morning. The one that, for all you guys who are already signed up for the Elite Fantasy NFL package, the one that Brian Healy and DC do. Thad and I did that the first year when we had the company in, and we had a lot of fun sitting around and talking about some of the injury news and all that stuff going on. We were supposed to be on from like 11 to 12. We wound up staying on every day to like 5 minutes before lock, just like going over every little piece of news and everything. So, but Thad, I figure we'll go back to the old school and let's kind of run through the games today. What we'll do today on the opening line, we're going to kind of run through the games. We'll go over some of the guys we're interested in fantasy, so that the fantasy crowd out there can be there. We'll talk about some of the spreads as well, so the sports betting crowd gets a little bit. I try to consider myself a man for the people. I know you do as well. So
absolutely,
let's give the people what they want. Let's help them make some money on NFL Week 6 here. So let's start off with last night's game, real quick here. Pretty much didn't go exactly as everybody expected, but at the end of the game, Patriots covered the 16.5 spread. Their defense looked pretty good. The Giants basically playing without any of their starters didn't do too much. Any thoughts about last night's game? Anything you saw?
Yeah, it covered the spread, which I was happy about. So I certainly hammered that. From a macroscopic point of view, everything went the way that I thought it was going to go. Of course, the Patriots won, covered the spread. Defense was downright phenomenal. From a microscopic point of view, things were a little weird. I wasn't expecting Tom Brady to vulture touchdowns from Sony Michel.
Mm-hmm.
Michel did get the touches. He did get the rushing yards, so that made up for it. It would have been nice. It would have been icing on the cake if you would have had some TDs. But in fantasy, I paired up Sony Michel in the defense. Turned out fantastic. It was fun. No complaints whatsoever. Even if I knew things were going to happen the exact same way, I would have done the exact same thing. I got a little bit of everything. I had Tom Brady in season long, so that worked out fine.
Mm-hmm.
So Julian Edelman, who is my dude, of course, was in beast mode. So it all worked out fine. Just kind of as expected, which is, for me, I kind of gauge how things are going to go on Sunday based on the way things go on Thursday. And usually when things on Thursday goes off the rails, I'm a little concerned for Sunday. So this at least sets me up really nicely in terms of how comfortable I feel in terms of making bets, DFS picks, season long, and so far so good.
Yeah, I have a little bit of that going on too. When I have a good Thursday, I'm always happy, because even if my Sunday sucks now, I'm like, I'm playing with house money. Like I'm giving you back what you gave me on Thursday, so that it's not that bad. It's always nice knowing you got that little cushion going into the weekend. One thing that did happen last night that could be a concern moving forward for the Patriots, Josh Gordon going down with that knee injury. Kind of, I don't even know if it was his knee or his ankle. It looked like his whole leg kind of buckled under on that interception there. So that was, or the fumble recovery that was ran back for a touchdown. So that was kind of bad on two angles there. You already had Philip Dorsett out. Jacoby Myers had an okay game. He had a couple targets in there. I think he ran routes on like 35 or 44 snaps or 44 dropbacks for Brady. So he could be somebody that we got to look at going forward. Maybe a guy to kind of pick up or think about for the waiver wires on Monday.
Yeah, I think what they usually do which is what they showed last night, is instead of kind of having someone fill in and take Josh Gordon's place, they go to Mr. Reliable, Julian Edelman.
Yep.
They pepper him with targets, whether it be long, short. You can use a dot, whatever metric you use. Julian Edelman ends up being the guy, and James White also.
Yeah.
So I think that if something happens and Gordon isn't able to make it in time for the next game, which these guys are tight-lipped when it comes to injuries, we'll never know.
We'll know 5 minutes before kickoff.
Yeah, we'll know right before kickoff. And if he plays, then he's healthy. And by that time, it'll be too late. So I'm going to hammer home Julian Edelman as being a receptions guy and yardage guy in the passing game in lieu of Josh Gordon if he can't make it.
Yeah, big PPR bump for him on DraftKings going forward if there's no Josh Gordon in there. So let's get into some of these Sunday games here. Let's start with the first one right now, which is going to be at 9:30 in the morning for us on the East Coast, 6:30 in the morning for our friends out in California. Carolina Panthers, Tampa Bay Buccaneers going on over in London. Any thoughts on this game? It's over-under is 47 right now. Carolina is favored by 2.5. I don't know if I like that.
I like half of that. I like the 47.5. I'm thinking about taking the over because I know that statistically the games in London usually end up over and by a significant amount in terms of a percentage of the games. So I'm fine with taking that over. And I really, really want to take Carolina in this 2.5. The only problem is, in addition to, to the trend of the overs usually hitting, things go crazy in these games in London. I mean, I was telling
Oakland last week.
Chicago Bears, Oakland last week. I was telling Corey, this is an environment where Blaine Gabbert had perfect passer ratings when he was playing there.
Yeah, people in England think Mercedes Lewis is the best football.
They think he's the best football. They think that these
touchdown gains left and right for him in London.
These guys are disappointed when the Jaguars don't play because they're like, "Oh, you guys are sending us your B teams."
Yeah.
So, I'm willing to take the over, and for me right now, I got an over 47.5. I'm willing to take that, but when it comes to the 2.5 for Carolina, I'm gonna pass only because I got other options. It's not like the only choice that I got.
Yeah. You know what sucks about this game for me is on a weekly basis right now, we love the wide receivers from Tampa Bay, whether it's Godwin or Mike Evans. They're winning people money in fantasy, daily fantasy left and right. We love Christian McCaffrey because he's basically a wide receiver 1/RB1 that you get both of them.
You get both.
It's almost like having an extra player in your lineup when you're able to put him in there because of the kind of usage that he gets. These are two teams that a lot of guys tend to wind up on a lot of Sunday rosters when we're making them. Not just me and you, but like just everybody in general. Tampa Bay guys tend to be highly owned. McCaffrey tends to be highly owned. With this game being at 6:30, it's not on any of the main slates for DFS. So,
right.
My cash game lineup this year has basically been plug in Christian McCaffrey, plug in Dalvin Cook, figure out the rest from there. So I may have to do something a little different this week because not only is it no Christian McCaffrey on the main slate, it's also not really the best game to go out there and roll out Dalvin Cook. So this is a week where we're probably going to have a lot more running backs in my player pool at the end of the week than I normally do because I had been going with a pretty small player pool of running backs and then kind of a huge pool of wide receivers, hoping I have the right combination of 2 or 3 guys that kind of go off for big games. I don't know if that's going to be the way that I wind up building here, and we'll kind of get to that as we talk to some of these other games.
Yeah, the one thing that I usually do that I've taught myself to do when it comes to these London games is a lot of people have that mentality of this game is kind of off the slate, so I'm not even going to consider it. I enter those Thursday games, and then I focus on so at least I have that option to play Christian McCaffrey, some Chris Godwin if I really want to. Again, like I said, weird things happen in these games, so I'm never incredibly comfortable doing that. But at least it gives me an option. And with regards to running backs, as we'll get to later on in the show, as the show goes on, this is going to end up, when it's all said and done, it's going to be a weird week, even weirder than you think. And I'll explain to you why as we go along.
Yeah. So let's move on to the Sunday games. First one I got here on my paper, Cincinnati against Baltimore. Baltimore right now, about an 11-point favorite. I think you could actually even get a 12 in some places if you're looking around. Over under on this game, 47.5. So a decent amount of points are expected to be scored in this game. There's a lot of games with low totals this week, 44s, 40s, 41s. This not being one of them. So what do you like on the Cincinnati-Baltimore side? How do you see this one going?
If I were forced to choose, I'd pick the under simply because most of the scoring, I think, is going to be done by Baltimore. Cincinnati is horrible.
Yep.
And even though this Baltimore defense isn't like the defense from back in the day with Ray Lewis, they're still formidable at home against a horrible Cincinnati team. I don't expect Cincinnati to put up a lot of points. From a DFS standpoint, I don't have any interest in any Cincinnati guys whatsoever. I love Lamar Jackson. As a matter of fact, this is a situation where I like to do the whole onslaught thing. When I'm in a situation where I'm convinced that regardless of the point total, the majority of those points are going to come from one team, that's when I do the onslaught. I think that this is a situation where, say if the over-under is 48, you could get 38 points from Baltimore easily. It could be 38-10 easily, in which situation I'm going to take Baltimore and I will stack Lamar Jackson, who Cincinnati's DVOA is 32nd in the league against passing. They allow the most passing attempts, the most rushing attempts and rushing yards to quarterbacks. Over the past 5 weeks, they've allowed 6 RB1s in 5 weeks. So, Mark Ingram is on the list. It's a narrow tree in terms of offense there. You know that when Lamar Jackson isn't running and he's throwing the ball, he's going to throw it to Hollywood Brown or to Mark Andrews. So those 4 guys, I'm willing to throw them in the lineup, maybe even the defense, and just let them eat.
Yeah. So one thing you mentioned there, we don't get too deep into some of the DFS lineup construction here. So I'm actually happy you're here with me on a Friday because we could actually do a little bit of that today. Explain to people a little bit about what you mean by an onslaught when you're building a lineup. Like what is the idea behind it and how do you actually go about doing it?
An onslaught is basically saying that, you're in a situation where the team is going to score a lot of fantasy points and you either know specifically who's going to score those points and you just throw all those guys into the lineup and just let them have at it. And because there's no sense in trying to choose 1 or 2 when all of them could potentially go off. Yep. And that's what I mean by onslaught. Quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and defense, or tight end and defense. Usually 3 or 4 of players from the same team, for me, by definition, is an onslaught.
Yeah, and that's a great strategy to use in tournaments because basically in order to win a tournament, you need everything to go right to begin with. And if everything goes right and Lamar Jackson goes out there and does what he did in week 1 and throws 5 touchdowns and, whatever he had, 300, 400 yards, somebody's got to be on the receiving end. So maybe you get 5 or 6 catches and 100 yards from Brown and 5 or 6 and 100 yards from Andrews. And maybe like Mark Ingram runs one in and then catches another one. So you get those points for Lamar Jackson too. And that's what Dad's talking about is that lineup could end up, if everything works out right, with 250 points. Now, if the Ravens get shut out, you get 0 points. But if the Ravens get shut out and you only had 2 or 3 of those guys, you were going to lose anyway.
You're going to lose anyways.
Yeah, it doesn't really make a difference there. But it gives you that chance to have that huge day that could win you something. So that's why sometimes throwing an onslaught in there makes a lot of sense, especially if you're thinking, like that is that this game is going to finish with one team just putting up a ton of points, which I don't really disagree with. I think Cincinnati sucks. I don't think Baltimore's as good as we thought they were when they had cupcakes in the first couple weeks and they beat up on them. But this is still a pretty good football team, and Cincinnati's not. So I agree with you. I'm on the Baltimore side of that. Interesting game coming up here. Seattle at Cleveland. The Browns have looked horrendous this year. Seattle really hasn't beaten anybody good, though. So there's a lot of questions on both sides of this game. Seattle currently favored by 2. Over-under on this game's 46. What do you see here?
This is a tough game. This is a game that, before the show, I mentioned there were a couple of games I wanted to pick your brain on, and this is one of them. I'm tempted to take Seattle in the 2 points because of Cleveland's eyeball test. They look absolutely horrible. And even though this Seattle isn't the, Legion of Boom in terms of defense, their offense is much more in sync than Cleveland's offense. So I'm tempted to take the Seattle in the -2 that I see here. As far as the over-under, at 46, what I'm looking at now, I'm thinking about taking the under just from the simple fact that I'm convinced that Seattle can score. I'm not convinced that Cleveland can score.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you there. I lean to the Seattle side here, but it makes me nervous. Like I'm in one of the DraftKings is doing like a super pool. You pick like 5 teams a week throughout the season. Whoever has the most at the end of the year wins the big grand prize and all that stuff. This was one of the games I originally had as one of the 5 for me for this week. And I think I wound up leaving it off when I ultimately got there to the end because I just don't think Cleveland is as bad as we've seen. And I don't want to take that route because I'm usually the guy that's on the other side of like, well, they are what they are. You are what your record says you are, right? I mean, that's the old Herm Edwards thing. But at the same time here, I think San Francisco is very good. So the thought that everybody has in their mind about this Cleveland offense is how horrible they looked against in my opinion, a very good San Francisco defense on Monday night national television where literally everybody in the entire country was watching them. It wasn't a Sunday afternoon game where only the people in the Cleveland area saw this. Like everybody in the country saw this. So everybody in the country is like, man, the Browns suck. They have a lot of talent on offense. They have a lot of talent on defense. They maybe San Francisco is better than people are giving them credit for, and maybe the Browns aren't as bad as we think they are.
Yeah, I'm willing to agree with you on that.
That's why I'm a little nervous. I mean, I think Chris Carson's a great play here. They just gave up 200 yards on the ground to the 2 running backs from San Francisco, Tevin Coleman and Matt Breida last week. I think you would rather run against Cleveland than pass. Because they do have, like, Myles Garrett on the outside, it's causing havoc this year. That guy is amazing. So you don't want to have to drop back a whole bunch. And Seattle doesn't really like to anyway. Seattle's if Seattle could run the ball 30 times, they would be very happy. To them, that's like the dream game plan scenario kind of thing. So I was high on Chris Carson, and then he misses practice yesterday.
Yeah.
So I got to see how that works out because if there's no Chris Carson here, that would change my thoughts on this game a lot. I think I would wind up more on the Cleveland side of it if that happens. But I have a lot of Chris Carson in fantasy. I'm expecting him to do well. I actually had him, Thad, as one of my favorite running backs of the week. $6,000 price tag on DraftKings. I think he's going to wind up really chalky, but it makes sense to me.
Yeah, I have him in my cash game right now.
Me too.
I saw an interview where he's dealing with this shoulder issue. He says that he's almost 100%. That makes me feel a lot more comfortable. Certainly would love to see him shrug off that injury designation to help keep him in the cash game situation. And because they'll be happy to give this guy 25 touches.
Yeah. The last 2 games. The last 2 games, they've just been feeding him.
Exactly. And we know that there's no real threat from anyone behind him on the depth chart. Mm-hmm. So he's the man. I think on the other side of the coin is in GPPs, that puts me on Russell Wilson because that dude is a grown man. The dude can go out and throw 4 touchdown passes and be 5% owned. You know what I mean? So especially if he's a great leverage play off of Chris Carson, who I expect to be a higher owned chalky play, especially if he shrugs off that injury designation.
Yeah, and that's another good point for the DFS guys out there. When you're playing in cash, a guy like Chris Carson makes sense because you're looking for volume. You're looking for guys that you can consistently know are going to get the ball so that they have chances and opportunities to do positive things for you. But what Dad's also talking about here is if Chris Carson's going to be 30% owned, that means that people probably aren't playing Russell Wilson because they're thinking, well, it's going to be the run game that wins it. But what if it's not the run game? What if Cleveland sells out to stop the run? And that leaves, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett in one-on-one situations, and each one of them catches a touchdown or Will Dissly gets a touchdown. Those guys are going to be way lower owned than Chris Carson is. So you could be the one guy or one of very few guys in your tournament that wind up getting, 30-point scores out of these guys that nobody else is thinking of. And really, do you know this, Dad? Do you know the number 1 fantasy quarterback is right now this week?
This week, I'm gonna have to say it's got to be.
For the beginning of the season until this week, the guy who's ranked number 1 fantasy quarterback right now.
It's got to be Russell Wilson.
It is Russell Wilson.
I mean, he's been dominating.
Yep.
Dominating.
Yeah.
So,
a 40-point game, I think, 2 weeks ago. He had a 29-point game last week. Right now, fantasy points per game, the highest scoring quarterback is Russell Wilson. And like Dad said, every week he's 5% for some reason. People
Yeah.
look at this team as a run heavy team and they just say, I don't want to play Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson can throw 4 touchdowns on 25 attempts.
That's exactly right. He's an incredibly efficient quarterback. He's shown it throughout the years. This isn't like some weird fluky thing where it's like, Joe Flacco all of a sudden being this studly quarterback. This is a situation where this guy's a stud. He's proven himself to be a stud, and he surrounded himself with some good receivers. I mean, 4 words that I never thought I'd ever say is Will Dissly is good.
Yes.
Will
Dissly is the number 1 fantasy tight end right now. The Seattle offense is just ridiculous at the moment.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. So I'm focusing on good offenses, good efficient offenses that are low owned are ways to win tournaments. So I'm gonna focus on Russell Wilson and GPPs.
Yeah, I like it. I like where your head's at with this one. So let's go on to another game I think that is going to be a little bit interesting. I know you're a big New Orleans Saints fan here. So Saints got an interesting game this week against Jacksonville Jaguars. Jags are favored by 1.5. Over under kind of low. It actually has dropped down to 43.5 for this game. But I kind of feel like there's some offense here, Dad.
I think there's some offense here as well. I think my only concern is once Drew Brees went down, myself and the whole – I love Teddy Bridgewater as much as the next guy. But myself and the entire city took a pause, and we didn't expect to go into Seattle and beat Seattle.
Yep.
We beat Seattle. We didn't expect to beat the Cowboys, even though we were at home, let alone hold them to like 10 points.
Mm-hmm.
And then we won last week against Tampa Bay. This week going into Jacksonville, it's going to be a test. It's going to be a test, but I do think that each team has vulnerabilities that the other one can exploit. And right now I see an over-under of 43.5, and I think we can get over that. I'm willing to take the over on that. At the moment, I see Jacksonville favored by 1.
Okay.
It could just be my homerism, but I think the Saints go in there and pull out a victory. I know Gardner Minshew is in a good spot in terms of people want to roster him this weekend. He's thrown multiple touchdown passes in like 4 or 5 games. DJ Chark has been, lighting the world on fire.
Number 5 overall fantasy receiver at the moment.
Yeah, he's been awesome. They got scoring touchdowns like every week. He's doing Chris Carson. All he does is score touchdowns.
Yep.
So you even got D.D. Westbrook kind of as a sneaky play in there in the slot, who actually like a ton this weekend.
A lot of targets for him lately.
A lot of targets. And we've seen and Teddy Bridgewater, even though he's not in my upper echelon of quarterbacks that I'm looking for, he's proven to me as of last week that he can get the job done. So I think if I had to pick an upset game, especially it's kind of easy to do with the spread of 1.
Yeah.
I'd take the Saints in the 1.
Yeah.
And just kind of let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah, and I don't think that's crazy. They're one of the few teams at plus money that makes a lot of sense here that you wouldn't even really blink about if they wound up winning this game. There's a lot of things in this game I like. Like, I don't really love Gardner Minshew for like GPPs because there's not a ton of upside there. But the guy's not a scrub. Like he's throwing for over 200 yards and 2 touchdowns every game, which is nice. And it also gives, some of those receivers, DJ Chark being the, obviously the one who has benefited the most up there. It makes a couple of those guys relevant, which, I mean, when Blake Bortles was the quarterback for Jacksonville, how many times have we ever said a Jacksonville wide receiver is relevant? It's been a long time since you could say that with a straight face and not have people be like, I'm taking all your cash games this week. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Leonard Fournette, 17 touches was his low on the season. Last couple games, 23 carries, 4 targets, or 4 catches, 29 carries, 2 catches. Just huge volume for this guy right now. You knew he was eventually going to put up some decent numbers. So I think he's somebody you can look at. 90% of snaps, averaging 25 touches a game, averaging 19 carries, averaging 6 targets. I mean, this is an every down running back who people should be playing more often than they are, especially in especially in cash games. I mean, this is what I like for cash game. Give me a guy that I know is going to get the ball 20 plus times. He'll do enough with those 20 plus touches to be, at least relevant for me. And then the reason I like the New Orleans side is the volume. It's a funnel where we know exactly where the volume is going to go.
Right.
You look at Michael Thomas, 13, 7, 9, 13 targets in 5 games. He's going to get double-digit targets. You know that's going to happen. That's going to give him opportunity. Alvin Kamara, 20, 14, 25, 20, 22 touches. So he's averaging over 20 touches a game. Another guy, you know they're going to give him the ball. That's what I really like. When I have teams where I know certain guys just get such a big percentage of the touches and you know, the carries, the catches, the targets, it's very easy for me to play those guys in fantasy because their range of outcomes is higher than the range of outcomes of some of these other guys. There's other guys that people will play, even in cash games, where maybe they get 7 touches or maybe they get 15. I don't want a maybe. If I'm playing somebody in a cash game, I want to know this guy's getting 15 touches, worst case scenario. Even if he plays like crap, 15 touches, he can still get me a score that's not going to kill me. And that's what I like about this New Orleans-Jacksonville game is Fournette, Thomas, Kamara, even DJ Shark to an extent, are all guys that you know are going to get the ball. You know they're going to have some kind of positive things going on. And I kind of agree with you. I like the over in this game. So I think there's a lot here we can look at for fantasy.
Agreed.
Not as much as the next game we're going to talk about, though. Houston, KC. The Chiefs are a 4-point favorite right now. The over-under has crept up, I think, to 55. It may even be higher right now. I wrote this down last night before I went to bed when I was doing research. Do we just play everybody in this game? I mean, is there a path where you think this game fails? Like, it's going to be the chalk game of the week. Like, how do we handle it?
It's going to be the chalk game of the week, and this is a game where, from a betting standpoint, in my opinion, I'm just not going to overthink it. I'm taking the over. I got 55.5 here, so I'm taking the over, in part because I learned this trick from Corey last week. When I saw it, right now I see the spread at 4.5, but initially when I saw it, it was 5. Okay, and he taught me about the whole magic number of the
Prime number. Yeah,
the
that's
prime number 5.
Yep.
So I ran with it because it worked last week as well. So I ran with it. So I'm gonna take the over, even at 55.5. I'm just not gonna overthink it. This is a game where you have a tale of two teams, right? It depends on which side you want to stack or how you want to stack this game from a fantasy standpoint. As far as the spread, I'm a little afraid. I don't know where to go. So that's just one question I want to go with. The spread that I have now is 4.5 in favor of Kansas City, which, gun to my head, I would take it because Kansas City at home is a different beast than Kansas City on the road. But still, that 4.5 has got me a little freaked out. So I'm going to stay away from it, but I will take the over. As far as from a DFS standpoint, Houston, you know where to go with Houston. It's going to be Watson, Hopkins, and Fuller.
Yep.
I'm not expecting Fuller to have 100 touchdowns again. That being said, even with the price bump, he's still in a good spot. He's not going to be sneaky. He wasn't sneaky last week.
No, 25% I was surprised about. I thought he was going to be lower on. Like, I didn't think I was going to be the only one on him, but I did not think he was going to be chalk.
I didn't even have him.
Okay.
I didn't even have him because I was of the frame of mind where you don't play Will Fuller when he's chalky.
Agree.
You know what I mean? And it came back to bite me in the ass. My only saving grace last week was I had Aaron Jones all over the place. So
games are nice.
It worked out.
Yeah.
So, but I didn't have him. This week, I don't have a problem having him, and I'm not even considering it chasing points because of the environment that he's in. Like I said, I'm not expecting him to come away with a career/record-setting game, but he could still pay off his price, especially in the cash game. He should get the volume. It's a concentrated scoring tree. Now, on the other side is where I kind of have a little bit of a problem. Okay, Pat Mahomes, I might have to go naked Pat Mahomes in here, only because over the past 5 weeks, they've had 5 different wide receiver ones.
Yep.
Who am I supposed to pair this dude with? Every time I pair him with Travis Kelce, nothing works out the way that I expect. I think this is also a wait-and-see situation because just like the running back situation that we'll get to in a little bit, this game, the health issues in this game will make or break the slate. Yep. We got Sammy Watkins banged up. We got Tyreek Hill, not sure if he's coming back or not. Byron Pringle is all of a sudden going to be in everybody's lineup if these dudes are out, and he's near minimum salary. So he's going to be probably the highest owned guy on the slate if these guys sit out. There's a lot of question marks going around. So a lot more certainty from the Houston side, a lot more question marks from the KC side, but certainly a game that I'm interested in.
Yeah, I think the wide receiver thing is something I wanted to mention as well, because I think that is going to be big, and especially if you're playing fantasy this week. From now, like if I had to make a guess from now, from everything I'm reading, it looks like Sammy Watkins is out.
I would think so too.
Tyreek Hill, though, very likely to play. I mean, he got in limited practice last week. He's been getting in limited practices this week, but I think they're limiting him because they're gearing him up to play, and they just don't want to overdo it with him. They'd rather him, go all out on Sunday than on a Thursday practice and all that. I think that he's going to wind up playing, which would make Pringle somebody that you don't want to play. But like Dad was saying, if he's out, Pringle's very cheap. Pringle had the best game of all three of those guys. So I like the naked Mahomes idea because that's kind of the way I've been playing him lately too. Because, what we mean by naked is, normally you play one of your quarterbacks with a wide receiver. If you're playing him naked, that means that you're not pairing one of his wide receivers with him. And I think that's a good way to go with Kansas City because there really aren't any cheap wide receivers. So you need a guy to really, really go off. And all these guys could wind up with one big play. Like that's kind of the way they've been doing it is you get a 50-yard, McCole Hardman touchdown. You get a 50-yard DeMarcus Robinson touchdown. You get a 50-yard Sammy Watkins or Tyreek Hill touchdown. So really none of them have huge scores at wide receiver. But when you add all that up, you got Patrick Mahomes throwing for, 370 yards and 4 touchdowns or something. And that's also the problem with Kelsey. I've had the same thing. I stopped playing him and Kelsey together because you need Kelsey to go for 10 catches, 120 yards, and 2 touchdowns to get upside at his price. And Mahomes is spreading it around enough where, I do this a lot with the Patriots as well. If you just play Tom Brady, you get, no matter who the touchdowns go to, whether it's Izzo or Myers or Edelman or White, you still get the fantasy points because you had the signal caller, the trigger man that threw them all. I kind of feel like Mahomes is getting to that point too, is they use so many different pieces on the offense, which is great for real life football, but it sucks for us trying to figure out where to go in fantasy football. So that's kind of the way I've been playing it as well. I got to be honest, I don't have a lean on the total on this game. I mean on the spread on this game. I agree with you. I like the over, which is why I'm going to have pieces of this game sprinkled on all my lineups. But I could easily see either one of these teams winning this game, let alone Kansas City covering the 4. But Kansas City could win this game by 2 touchdowns too. I think all those ranges of outcomes are viable here where I don't really want to mess with the point total in this game. I'm probably just going to stay away from it. I do like the over-under at 55 though.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stay away from the spread. I'll stick my neck out for the over-under pretty comfortably. So.
All right, so Dad, I'm sorry I even have to do this because we just went from talking about one of the most fun games to talk about to talking about the Washington Redskins and the Miami Dolphins.
I almost wore my Dolphins hat.
Redskins 3.5-point favorite here. Over-under is down to 41 in this game. Supposedly, new coach for the Redskins, Bill Callahan, somebody who is a offensive line guru. Supposedly we're going to get 30 carries from Adrian Peterson today. Not that anybody wants to see that at this point. Is there anything here? I got nothing. So if you got anything, go ahead. You can talk.
Okay, this is what I got. And this is before the show, I was telling you that there were a couple of games I want to pick your brain on. This is one of them as well.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, I saw the under of 41 and I took it. Okay. The reason, this is my rationale. This game is either going to be one of those 10 to 13 games,
right? Or
it's going to be 35 to 42. It's not even going to be no in between, right? Because these guys are both horrible.
Yes.
Defensively and offensively. The reason why I picked the under is because Bill Callahan is, for what God knows why, has decided that he wants to be a run-dominant offense now.
Establish the run, baby.
Establish the run, which means slow pace, slow game, slow scoring. So that's why I took that under on that. Now, that being said, from a daily fantasy standpoint, I'm going to have no choice but to go with Adrian Peterson in tournaments. He's going, Miami is horrible against the run.
Yep.
Adrian Peterson still got some legs on him. It's not the spring chicken, but still on occasion, and we've seen this for seasons now, he'll have games where he'll have 8 rushes and 35 yards, and then he'll have games where he'll have 19 rushes, 125 yards, and 2 touchdowns.
Yep.
This is one of those games. So I'm willing to take him from the Houston side. Now, that being said, since they're going to be run heavy, or at least that's the coach speak, I'm going to have to pass on Case Keenum. I'm going to have to pass on Scary Terry McLaurin, just for that reason. Now, from the Dolphins side, there are some cheap guys that I think will be cash game viable that people will target. I think Kenyon Drake and Preston Williams are two guys that are going to be on people's radars, and I think for good reason. I wouldn't go crazy and roster both these guys in the same game because, like I said, I think it's going to be the under. But I think those guys, from a price standpoint, are attractive.
Yeah, price and volume, really, because, right. I mean, Williams the last 2 weeks, 7 and 12 targets. He's 4,100 on DraftKings, a PPR site. I mean, if he makes 4 catches for 40 yards, you're getting at least 2x out of him. If he finds the end zone, you're getting a big upside game. Same thing with Kenyon Drake, 4,400. The Kalen Ballage experiment has pretty much ended. This guy only saw, he saw like very few snaps at all last week. They do have a rookie, I want to say Mark Andrews, but I feel like I might be wrong on that, or Mark Edwards. They do have a rookie running back who they took that they started mixing in a little bit. But, it's basically Kenyon Drake's team, and this is probably the best matchup that he's going to have this year. So there are a couple cheap guys, that is right. Again, the Adrian Peterson thing, I don't think you're crazy. Like, we see it once or twice a year where he flashes that, big time upside that people thought he had when he came out of college and before all the injuries and the beating the kids and the suspensions and everything else that he wound up having go on. But he can still get it done, on occasion. We saw him do it a couple times last year. That's the reason he's still on this team this year, is because of some of those big games he had last year.
And just one thing I just want to mention about this game, I've heard a lot of people talk about how neither team wants to win. And, I understand the rationale of saying that, but two things. Number one, when these guys get on the field and that whistle blows, these dudes are trying to win that game. Mm-hmm. Right? And number two, no matter how much a team wants to lose, it's very, very difficult. And a lot of people don't understand this. It's very difficult to lose all of your games in the NFL. In the 100 years that the NFL has been in the league, you can count the number of teams that have gone winless on one hand. Okay, so somebody's got to win this game. And at some point, these teams are going to win. So I would just kind of take that out of your mentality when you're thinking about either betting or rostering on this game.
The GMs, the owners, and some of the fans may want to see a team lose all their games to get the first pick. The players on the field never go out there looking to lose games.
Ever.
Yeah, they're gonna give their best effort because that effort goes on tape, and that tape helps you get your next contract and take care of your family. So they're definitely trying their hardest, and they don't want to hear any of this. We're tanking to get the first pick stuff. So here's an interesting game in terms of one I want to watch this weekend, Thad, but not in terms of one I really want a lot of exposure to for fantasy or even for betting, because I can see it kind of going both ways. Philadelphia Eagles at the Minnesota Vikings. Definitely want to watch this. Don't have a lot of interest in having any of my hard-earned money on it because I could see this going either way, really.
I have zero interest with regards to betting, whether it be the over-under, which I see at the moment is 44. Because I mean, like I said, if I had to choose, I'd probably pick the under just because Philadelphia's offense is kind of sputtering. I don't expect them to go into Minnesota and start, airing it out. Carson Wentz, I like him as much as the next dude, right? But his passing attempts have gone down. His ADOT's gone down. I'm not expecting the run game sucks. I'm not expecting a big offensive output. So from a betting standpoint, I'm off of it. From a DFS standpoint, I do have some interest in GPPs in Kirk Cousins. And the reason why is because the way to beat Philadelphia is through the air. These dudes got a pretty damn good run defense. I think they're 4th in DVOA against the run. And while Dalvin Cook falls under that category of high-volume guys, I mean, we've seen – everyone's always going to go back to that first game of the season where they threw the ball only 10 times.
Yep.
But if they want to win this game, they're going to have to air it out. And I think that the Adam Thielen, that squeaky wheel, Stephon Diggs, that squeaky wheel that didn't really get a whole lot of grease last week, I think these guys are going to be low. Well, maybe not so much Adam Thielen, but Stephon Diggs is going to be low owned. Kirk Cousins is going to be low owned. So I'm willing to – and again, this is a scoring tree where in the passing game, where the ball's going. They're not throwing it to Kyle Rudolph or none of these other dudes. So I would focus on these guys, but only in the GPP.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't even think you have to completely fade Dalvin Cook. I like Dalvin Cook being part of that stack as well.
Right. Home favorite.
Yeah, home favorite. They do run a lot of the screen game too. So I
Yeah.
mean, he could take a 5-yard screen and break a tackle or two, pick up a couple blocks, and go to the house for 60, 70 yards out.
Right.
Kirk Cousins gets those, or they could run the little shuffle pass play that everybody's running right now, and you get the passing yards for it. I love that shit.
I love it too. I saw it last night with Tom Brady. I was like, that son of a bitch.
Yeah, I was like, yeah. Well, on that one with was that the James White one where he
that was the James White one?
Yeah, that would have been nice. Well, I mean, Brady got the rushing touchdown anyway, so I'll take the extra two fantasy points for that too.
Yeah, me too.
On the Philly side, I don't hate Zach Ertz in this game, basically because I think Xavier Rhodes may not be the cornerback that he used to be. But what makes Rhodes a good corner is that he's big, he's strong, and he's physical. What makes Alshon a good receiver is that he's big, he's strong, and he's physical. The guys that Rhodes usually struggles with tend to be like the fast guys because it's a bad matchup. It's like boxing. The styles make the fights. But when you have a big wide receiver and a big quarterback, they're just going to kind of bang with each other. So it's not an advantage for either side there. You put a little fast guy there with Rhodes. Rhodes is big and he's going to jam him at the line. But that one time he gets away, it's a 70-yard touchdown, So I don't think this is going to be a game where Alshon's going to have a lot. You were saying the A-dot is down for Wentz. The A-dot's been down for him since Deshaun Jackson went out. And, I mean, Mac Hollins is a nice young receiver, but he's not Deshaun Jackson. He's not able to stretch the defense. So, really, that kind of narrows down the things that they can do. And that means passes out of the backfield to the running backs or passes to the tight ends when they go with the 2-tight-end set. Goddard's just not getting enough work, but Ertz is somebody I think we can use. So that's the one guy I'd add to it. Maybe even bring back that Minnesota Cousins Stephon Diggs stack with a little Zach Ertz on the other side. Hope we get a couple.
I like it. I like it a lot.
So that's something that I'm looking at there. Another interesting game this week, Dad. Atlanta, 2.5-point favorite going on the road to Arizona. Corey has been basically banging the table about betting against Atlanta, and it's been making us money so far this year. He just thinks that this team is they're just broken right now. They have a lot of good offensive pieces, but I tend to agree with them. They can't stop anybody on defense. Like, I would not be shocked if they wind up losing this game, even as a favorite, going into Arizona. What are you thinking here? Because this is the second highest over-under on the day at 51, and a lot of these guys are more reasonably priced than the Houston KC guys. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of people on this in fantasy.
Yeah, absolutely. As far as from the betting side, I took the over at 52. Okay. Both of these defenses are just dreadful. These guys both teams are within the top 6 in terms of pace. So they're going to be playing a lot of snaps, high-paced game, a lot of scoring, not a lot of defense. So I picked the over for over 52. And I went ahead and I took Atlanta in the 2.5. Okay. I agree with you guys in terms of Atlanta being horrible. And I have no problem with that, especially as a Saints fan. They suck, and they can continue to suck. However, if I had to choose a team that was worse than them, I would say Arizona. I mean, it's hard when you choose. The only thing harder than trying to decide between the better of two really good teams is trying to decide the worst of two bad teams. Yep. So you can't really go wrong in terms of – because they both suck. But I think that I'm going to give the edge just because – I think the offense is a little stronger than the offense for Arizona, so I think I'll take Atlanta in the -2.5.
Yeah, I actually did the same thing. That's one of the teams I took in the Super Pool. I actually went with Atlanta just because I really just have zero faith in Arizona. The other thing that gives me even less faith in Arizona is the status of David Johnson right now. So I think we got to talk about this, especially for fantasy-wise. I mean, I told people on Monday, go ahead and pick up Chase Edmonds. Make sure you have that fab bid in there for Chase Edmonds. What I liked was not even – I mean, the 37-yard touchdown was obviously great last week, but that's not the reason why. What I liked last week is when Johnson went out, he saw 8 carries and 3 targets, which tells me that if Johnson doesn't play this week, they're basically just going to kind of slide him into the David Johnson role, which means probably 10 to 15 carries and 5 to 7 targets. And if you're going to give me a guy that's near min price, who is now going to step in against Atlanta, a team who running backs tend to have big games against anyway, especially catching the ball out of the backfield, and you're going to give him 20 touches for 4,600. If Johnson doesn't play, Chase Edmonds is like almost a lock in every one of my lineups.
Yeah, and we've seen this before. DJ has had his issues with health and injury before, and Edmonds has been the guy that's kind of stepped up. at the beginning of the show, I mentioned how, as we get closer to kickoff, things are going to get kind of weird. And the first weird part is when we're waiting on the injury news from Kansas City, where Pringle could end up being a chalky guy at near minimum salary. Edmonds is that second piece of the puzzle that could end up being super chalky to where in the end you're going to be able to play whoever you want because you got these two guys in your lineup. So I am not as optimistic that Johnson is going to play this week. Mm-hmm. So if I had to say, and I don't have any inside information, just kind of interpreting the practice reports,
yep,
it doesn't look very good. It's not like one of those situations where it's like Chris Carson, where he says he's near 100%, and he's not near 100%. So I would consider Edmonds someone that if you don't have him already in season long, you better go ahead and make that wire bid right now because he's going to be a valuable play this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, if he's out there right now, not on somebody's team, just pick him up either way because you've seen this with DJ before where, if the injury didn't happen yet, there's a good chance it's going to with him. And this is a kind of handcuff. He's a high-value handcuff you definitely want to have around. Let's talk about the Atlanta side for a little bit here. Obviously tight ends, everybody knows the situation. Tight ends have been just absolutely tearing apart the Arizona Cardinals. You got Austin Hooper, who is currently the number 2 tight end behind your boy Will Dissly so far this year in fantasy. Seeing a lot of targets, putting him in a really good matchup here. His price has come up a little bit. He's likely to be kind of chalk, but I kind of like the chalk this week.
You got to eat it. It's the tastiest chalk that you'll find at tight end for a while. This is a bit different from the Tyler Eifert tight end chalk against Arizona.
Way different from the Tyler.
Way different, yeah. So, he'll be chalk and he'll be tasty. I think the only thing that might keep his percentage owned down ever so slightly, at least on DraftKings, is the fact that George Kittle is only $200 more than he is.
Yeah.
So, if you want to do George Kittle over Hooper, I wouldn't call you stupid because there's a chance I might do it, if I got the 200. But this is another one of those just stick to what works and put Hooper in your lineup.
Yeah. Do you have any lean with the wide receivers? Because we've seen double-digit fantasy points the last 3 weeks for Mohamed Sanu. We've seen both Ridley and Julio go off for 30, 40-point games, and we've seen them both fail to reach 10 fantasy points. Is there a rhyme or reason to this, or is it just kind of a crapshoot where if you really want to cover yourself, you need to make 3 or 4 lineups and mix and match which ones you use and which ones you fade?
Yeah, it's the latter. If I were to choose a cash game option, I would go with Mohamed Sanu, a guy that I think is reliably getting those targets, while at the same time I'm not expecting him to come away with 12 receptions and 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. Julio is Julio. He's a guy where I expect to see that injury designation next to his name, and I just kind of don't worry about it. It's probably some ankle or something. So, and by the end of the week, it's gone. He's either going to have a huge game or he's going to have a crappy game, which basically makes him a GPP play by default. I think in this situation, I'm happy to roll with Julio because I think he'll be a lower-owned prospect as compared to some of those more expensive wide receivers like DeAndre Hopkins and the like. Ooh. So, but like you said, it could be Ridley. It could be Julio. It could be Sanu. You kind of have to cover your bases. I'm going to roll with the Julio, Ridley, Sanu in that order.
Okay.
And in GPPs, and then I'll, use Austin Hooper in cash games.
Yeah, Hooper is actually my cash tight end at the moment right now,
too. Mine too.
And I think there is a little bit of merit in fading him in a tournament, going with some of the other guys, even if you go with the Atlanta stack. Because I think if you go Ryan, Hooper, and any one of those wide receivers, that's probably what most people are going to wind up doing. So if you're trying to get away from that, one entry in a big field, probably the way I'd go about doing it too. Couple more games we got left here. This one I got a little bit of a hot take on. San Francisco against the Rams. Rams favored by 3.5, over under 50.5. Big news piece coming out here too as well, Thad. Todd Gurley didn't practice again yesterday. Not limited practice, not, he was taking it easy as a veteran. Straight up did not practice yesterday, and there's already rumblings that Maybe we see a little Malcolm Brown, a little Henderson, and maybe Gurley takes this week off. That could change a lot of things here for the Rams, at least in my opinion of what would happen in this game for the Rams. So how are you looking at the San Francisco Rams game?
Well, the injury designation to Todd Gurley, that's the third piece of the 1, 2, 3 that I was talking about, that about making this slate kind of funky. You know, Pringle, Edmonds, and then Brown. Those guys are so cheap that once they become chalk, if they become chalk, you can do whatever you want in your lineup because you got 3 minimum price guys or near minimum salary guys, and you can just load up everywhere else.
Yep.
Again, just like David Johnson, I'm not incredibly optimistic that Todd Gurley is going to play this game. Again, no inside information. I'm just interpreting what I see from the practice reports. Not very optimistic. So I am preparing as if he's not going to play, in which case, Brown's going to be a very popular dude.
I think that's true. Here's my hot take for this game. Like, again, I talked up the San Francisco defense a little bit earlier in the day here today. If Jared Goff has basically thrown 38 or more passes in 4 of these 5 games so far, if Gurley doesn't play, I think we could see another 40 attempt Jared Goff game here.
Mm-hmm.
And even though San Francisco's, basically their pass rush, as we saw last week, is very good, and they beat up on Cleveland last week. If Goff's going to throw the ball 40 times, there are certain things in this passing game that I want to have exposure to. Cooper Kupp, 10, 9 targets the first 2 weeks. Since then, 12, 15, 17, 4 straight games of 100 yards or more. I think they're almost using Cooper Kupp as like a Julian Edelman in this offense.
I'm so glad you took the word. I was thinking it, and you said it. That's exactly right.
And then again, without Gurley in there to take some of the, they don't have their quote-unquote Sony Michel. So this is one of those games where, I could see another 15 targets coming for Kupp. I could see another 40 pass attempts coming for Goff. Maybe he's not as good as he is, normally, but he also is a guy who's much better at home than he is on the road. Like, I feel like this is 50.5 is the total here. So it's the third highest total. And I kind of feel like Goff and the Rams passing game is going overlooked this week.
Yeah, I think that's actually a fantastic point of view. And I never really thought about it like that. I think another
I'm hoping not a lot of people think about it like that.
I don't think they will, because I thought about Goff as a GPP play, and I just kind of shoot it away. And the only reason why I even thought about him as a GPP play, because I make a list of players. I kind of go through everyone that we talk about, everyone that everyone's talking about, and nobody's talking about Goff. So I put a circle around him. Yep. And I put a circle around Dak Prescott too, which I'm sure we'll get to. So he's certainly in play. I think another thing that makes him an interesting play is, and we've mentioned this strategy earlier in the show, is when you look for teams that have a highly concentrated scoring algorithm, a scoring tree, guys that are most likely to get the scoring. And Brandon Cooks is still in concussion protocol.
Yep.
So that takes one, these guys are kind of like the Kansas City Chiefs version, where people leave them alone because they don't know who to stack these dudes with, So with potentially no Todd Gurley, potentially no Brandon Cooks, that leaves Cooper Kupp, he's in my cash game lineup. The dude's phenomenal.
Mine too, yeah.
And that leaves Robert Woods, who people have all but left for dead.
They hate him.
I
love that people hate him because I actually like him too. Yeah,
he's going to win somebody GPP, and this is certainly a week that can happen. So I am certainly going to endorse that Jared Goff, and I'm going to have to make some Jared Goff lineups for sure.
Yeah, and even the tight end Gerald Everett has been getting a little more involved in this. He's a guy that's going to show up on my tight end article that comes out later today on Elite Fantasy. So make sure you guys get over there if you're not signed up already. But he's one of the cheap ones that you can kind of throw in there. I think he's sub $4,000 on DraftKings this week, low 5s over on FanDuel. Had a monster game last week with a bunch of targets. It looks like he's getting, the lion's share of the passing work with Tyler Higbee kind of still rounding himself back from that injury. So there's a lot of different ways you can go with it. The problem I would have, though, Thad, for San Francisco, their path to win this game is the same path they used last week against Cleveland. They want to run the football. They want to go heavy Tevin Coleman and Matt Breida. They're going to use 5 wide receivers. Nobody's going to get more than 60% of the snaps. The only thing I can run it back with, if I don't want to use a running back here, is Kittle, because Kittle is Kittle is seeing the most targets on this team. He's getting the most snaps on this team of anybody that's a pass catcher. I have zero desire to play Jimmy G. I like him, but I don't think he has upside. So for me, if you're going to run it back in this game, hoping you get a shootout, I think Kittle's like the only option you can really go with.
He's the guy that I would go with. I think if you really are stretching, if for some reason you really don't want to play him, maybe you can go with Deebo Samuel.
Deebo's my favorite receiver. I can't trust. He's 60%. He's 60% of snaps, and he's seeing like 6 or less targets.
Right.
There are literally 50 wide receivers that are going to see more volume than him. Not saying that he can't catch a long touchdown or outscore those other 50 guys, or at least some of those other 50 guys, but I can't get myself. I want to so bad, but I couldn't get myself to do it. Yeah.
Well, and the thing is, you don't have to, because, like you said before, this isn't going to be a heavily owned stack.
No.
So you don't have to get funky with this. You don't have to be putting out Marquise Goodwin to try to mix it up. And just the unowned part is going to come from the Rams side, and then you just bring it back with Kittle, and you just kind of sit back. Because the thing is, the games, the over-under is over 50. It's over 50 and a half. So, and nobody's kind of talking about that. Everybody's talking about the Arizona game. Everybody's talking about the Kansas City game. So I think this is a very, very sneaky game, and I'm really digging that Rams stack.
All right, so let me ask you a question here. I play the $100 King of the Beach queue, right? Trying to get myself down to Miami, or I think it's in Miami this year. The $100 one, there's 10 people or so. What percentage do you think I get? Now, Cooper Kupp's going to be chalk anyway, because a lot of people are going to play him one way or another. But what percentage owned do you think I get Goff in a 120-person tournament? How many other people you think are going to be on the same thought?
What's the max entries?
120. That's what I'm saying. 120 person and $100 entry. 120, I think, is the max entries.
So 120 max entries. Okay. I think that you'll get him at sub 5. Sure.
That's what I'm thinking. So I'm one of 6 people that plays Jared Goff this week.
You'll get him at sub 5. I want to say sub 4, but because he's not on anybody's radar.
That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that there are 4 or 5 people that have him. And then, I mean, obviously, I think Cooper Kupp you're not getting. Cooper Kupp's going to be – he's going to be 30% probably, maybe even more. Especially in the $100. Like, a lot of the sharp guys are not going to let, a guy getting 15 targets in a 50-point game kind of slide by without any ownership there.
Right.
So I think you'll get Kupp. But if you play Goff, if you play Wood, you could wind up getting these guys like 5% or less. And
absolutely.
That could be the thing that sends me to Miami, Thad.
The Goff, Wood, Kittle, nobody's going to have that.
Yeah. So that's what I'm hoping. So if the Rams game goes off and the Rams offense goes off, you guys, I'm going to be sitting here with my pants off watching football. All right. So let's move on here. We got, you mentioned your boy Dak Prescott here. Dallas against the Jets. I'm going to be honest. I'm a Jet fan. Everybody knows that. My favorite bet of the week is the Dallas Cowboys. I have teased them down to 1 on literally every teaser I put in here. I took them as one of my teams in the Super Pool at -7. I have bet on them straight up at -7. I know Sam Darnold's back, but as somebody who has had to sit through, because I'm a fan, 60 minutes of every Jet game so far this year, luckily we already had our bye, so it's only been 4. I don't see any way that the Jets can keep this game within a touchdown.
Yeah, I took Dallas in 7.5.
Yep.
And that's why I was looking at Dak Prescott as one of those guys for one of those same reasons where I make a list of the quarterbacks and kind of erase everyone that everyone's talking about. And one of the guys that I had left over, in addition to Jared Goff, was Dak Prescott. Nobody's talking about this dude. Everybody's talking more so about the Jets side because Sam Darnold's coming back. People are interested in Jamison Crowder because he's in the slot, and they saw that he got like 17 targets in that first game, which I don't have a problem with.
I'm actually on that too.
Yeah, I'm on that. I'm not expecting him to get 17 targets again, but double-digit targets is certainly within the realm of possibility.
Agreed.
But everybody's talking about that Jets side. Nobody's talking about the Dallas side. Nobody's talking about Dak Prescott. Nobody's talking about Zeke. Nobody's talking about Michael Gallup or Amani Cooper. None of those guys. And I think that this is another team that you could potentially, if you could figure it out, I would either do, a Dak and a Cooper, or Dak and Gallup as a stack that no one's going to be on, and even Zeke. Nobody's talking about Zeke this week. Everybody's talking about Le'Veon Bell, which, again, got him in my cash game lineup. I think he's awesome. But from a GPP standpoint, I'm looking at the Dallas side.
Yeah, Le'Veon has been on the field for, I want to say he's either top 3 or top 4 for largest percentage of snaps that he's been out there for. And even though the yardage hasn't been great, because one of the reasons why I don't like the Jets this week and I love Dallas is that the offensive line sucks. But he is getting 20 touches. Like, he's getting 5-6 targets. He's getting 12, 15 rushes. I mean, listen, this Jets offense is bad, guys. Like, believe me, I've watched them all. They are bad. But he is a guy that's getting a lot of volume. So cash game-wise, I have no problem. I think he has a very high floor. And listen, he's doing all this without finding the end zone. Like, eventually the touch – God, as a Jet fan, I hope. Eventually the touchdowns are going to come. You know what I mean? At some point. So when the touchdowns do come, that's going to give him a big boost to what he's already doing just based on the volume of the touches and the catches and all that he has. So I kind of agree with you there. And nobody is on Dallas. Like I said, I mean, I'm expecting them to beat up on the Jets here. This is another game like Baltimore-Cincinnati where we talk about the onslaught where you could just throw 4 guys in here. Maybe they win this game 35-7 and, you're the only one with Dallas. And at the end of the week, you end up with $1 million and a trip to the King of the Beach or something like that. One more game we want to discuss here. We'll leave the Sunday and Monday night games for the other guys. Tennessee, 2-point underdog against Denver. I think Tennessee at plus 115 in this game is a very live dog, Thad. Over under only 40.5.
Yeah, as far as the over under, I'm gonna take the under. From a personal standpoint, I'm staying away from it completely, just because I got enough good. I'm not gonna bet on every game, and I got enough action going on before we get to the player props part of the weekend. So, but if I had to choose, I would pick the under, just because from an offensive standpoint, we're talking about 2 quarterbacks that aren't very exciting. They could implode at any moment. Every now and then, Marcus Mariota might surprise you and have a 2 or 3 touchdown game, but those games are few and far in between. Playing in Denver, you can forget about it. And we're talking about Joe Flacco here, the guy who, granted, I love Cortland Sutton, I love Emmanuel Sanders, but this isn't Peyton Manning that's throwing them the ball. You know what I mean? So I'm going to take the under on that. As far as the spread, I didn't really know what to do with it. That's why I stayed away from it. So, but if you're higher on the Tennessee side.
I like the fact that Tennessee is getting plus 115. So I'm really higher on the price. For me, I think Tennessee is the better of these 2 football teams, and you're giving me plus money on it. Like, if Tennessee,
I agree.
If Tennessee was -1 and -120, I wouldn't bet them. And that's not a very big swing from where they are, but, I do think they're the better team here. Here's my thing with Tennessee. It's something I kind of noticed. Tennessee needs to score first. Because if they score first, then they can rely on Derrick Henry and rely on that defense, and Mariota just has to pick up a couple third downs and stuff here. The one skill Mariota has that I give him credit for is he doesn't turn the ball over. Like, Tennessee knows how to win football games. They get a lead, and then they just don't do anything stupid, and they let other teams beat themselves. Mm-hmm. Where Tennessee gets in trouble is when the other team goes out to a lead. Because now you have to see Mariota throw the ball 30, 35 times. You have to kind of cut back on using Derrick Henry, who's your best weapon. And your defense is on the field all the time, and they get tired, and then they're not as effective. So you can see game flow being super important to a team like Tennessee, because when they get in a negative game script, it's a disaster because they don't have the talent to win games that way. But when they're in a positive game script, Henry's a bruiser. He's going to pick up those yards. He's going to fall forward. He's going to put you in 3rd and shorts. And those are good situations to be in. So I could see Tennessee taking the lead and kind of winning this game. So I like them at the plus 115 number. Fantasy-wise, though, I don't really like much in this game. I mean, I want to play Phillip Lindsay, but they're still splitting the carries right down the middle with Royce Freeman. So you really need him to get those touchdowns and those big plays. Otherwise, he has a low floor. So GPP play, I guess you can go that route. I'm not going to ever tell you, a guy who's a favorite and at home, that's one of the best situations for running backs.
Yeah.
I don't like Derrick Henry's upside because he doesn't catch any passes, and I play more on DraftKings. So if you're a FanDuel guy, a little bit of a better play over there where touchdowns mean more and the yards mean more. But on DraftKings, if you can't get me catches, you very rarely stay in my player pool, past the first round of cuts. And that's what I kind of feel like. Derrick Henry always makes the first round of cuts, but Derrick Henry never makes the second round of cuts when I start really honing in on I want to play these guys, and these are the guys that I want to be in there. He always winds up getting cut, and his returns are around there. Like, it's 12 points a game. It's 10 points. It's 15 points. He's not really popping off for 25, 30 where he has upside, but he never really has a bad game where he has 4 or 5 points. He's always solid, but never really great. So fantasy-wise, I just really don't love too much here. So, Cortland Sutton maybe, but I'm a fellow University of Delaware ass-kicking chicken, and I can't even put any faith behind Joe Flacco. So I really don't want to go that route overall. But, yeah, that's about it. So, Thad, let's wrap this up this way. One bet this week for your life. Who's the team that you would take? Over, team, whatever it is. One bet this week. Which one are you making?
I'm going to take the over for the Atlanta-Arizona game, over 52. Yeah, I'm incredibly confident in taking the over on that game. If I would sell everything that I owned in order to put that money on the over. So, that's
there you go. Thad's over in the Arizona-Atlanta game is his best bet. As a New York Jet fan, mine is going to be the Dallas Cowboys winning that game by I got it at 7 earlier in the week, but even at 7.5 is fine. Monday, Corey and I usually talk about lines when they first come out. I thought this should have been a double-digit line, even with Sam Darnold playing the way the Jets have looked this year. So if I could get this anything under double digits, I am in on it. So my bet for the week, my big bet, mortgage the house, sell the kids, put everything on the line kind of bet, which actually sounds pretty good at this point. It would be the Dallas Cowboys, even if it's -7. And I'll even give you guys the hook and take the -7.5 on them. I still think they cover that number real easy. So you did the show with Corey last week, right? So we always end the show with the big piece of chicken. So who's getting your big piece of chicken this week for NFL?
For yesterday's game?
Oh yeah, for yesterday. Yeah, who gets your big piece of chicken for tonight?
I'm gonna give this bastard a big piece of chicken, and I hope he chokes on the chicken bone, son of a bitch. It's gonna be Tom Brady.
Yeah.
Am I jealous? Of course I'm jealous.
Yeah.
Let's not.
2 rushing touchdowns for him yesterday.
2 rushing touchdowns. I mean, the dude is the GOAT. I'm not even gonna lie. He looked good.
Yeah, and he passed Peyton Manning, I think, for overall passing number 2 on the list of
for completions or something. Yeah.
I don't know. He broke another record. Like, he doesn't have them all already.
Yeah, come on. I mean, and the dude is having a good time. He's like trolling people on Twitter, and he looks good, man. He's an easy guy to hate, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, his beautiful wife and his beautiful baby mama, who he left to go get.
I know,
like,
dude.
Unbelievable.
And his wife makes so much more money than him that his money is like chump change. That's like couch money.
Yeah, it must be nice. I hope to have the Tom Brady problems one day in life.
Yeah, so, nice problems to have.
Yeah, I mean, there's I'm going to give mine to Tom Brady as well, too. That was the guy that I was going to give it. And, I mean, after last night, he kind of deserves it. Yeah. Here's what I will say, Thad. I grew up a Yankees fan. So, like, the question of if you could change your life with one person in the world, who would it be? Like, my answer was always Derek Jeter. But, Tom Brady is that's.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I would like to sit in a room and have a beer with those 2 guys and listen to them discuss that question of, who you would rather be in life, because there's – a long list of beautiful women and good stories that those 2 guys have that, I would not mind living vicariously through at some point in another life.
Absolutely.
All right. So anyway, for Rad Thad, this is Benny Ricciardi. This has been your episode of The Opening Line. Be good.